my partner announced. By the way, my kids don't see you as their dad, accept it after 5 years together. I said, finally clarity. When I removed them from my insurance and stopped paying their private school tuition, they suddenly saw me differently. I 38 male have spent the last 5 years pouring every ounce of my soul, my paycheck, and my patience into a family that wasn't mine by blood. My partner came into my life with 2 kids from a previous marriage that left her with nothing but a pile of debt and a bitter taste in her mouth. I stepped up. I didn't just play house. I built the house. I paid the mortgage, the groceries, the vacations, and most importantly, the $35,000 annual private school tuition for both kids because the local public school wasn't up to her standards. The dynamic was always a bit strained, but I chalked it up to them being teenagers. I was a provider, the guy who showed up to every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference, and the one who added them to my high-tier corporate health insurance the second we moved in together. I never asked for a dime. I never asked to be called Dad. I just wanted to be part of the team. Yesterday, the mask didn't just slip. It shattered. It started over a stupid argument about chores. Dad had left his expensive gaming laptop on the kitchen floor, and I almost stepped on it. When I told him he needed to be more responsible with things I paid for, he rolled his eyes and walked away. My partner didn't back me up. Instead, she cornered me in the kitchen 10 minutes later. You need to stop trying to discipline them, she said, her voice cold. You're overstepping. Overstepping. I asked, I'm trying to teach them respect. I'm the one who bought that laptop. I'm the one making sure they have a roof over their heads. She let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Is that what this is about? Money? You think because you pay for things, you get to be their father? Let's get one thing straight. They don't see you as their dad. They never have. They never will. You're just a guy I live with who happens to have a good job. Accept it and stay in your lane. The room went silent. I looked at her, waiting for the I'm sorry, I'm just stressed, or the I didn't mean it. It never came. She just stood there with her arms crossed, looking at me like I was a service provider who had failed to deliver. Finally, I said, my voice was surprisingly calm. Clarity. What is that supposed to mean? She snapped. It means I hear you, loud and clear. If I'm not their father, and I'm just a guy you live with, then I have no business interfering in their lives, financially or otherwise. I'm going to my office. I spent the next 3 hours on my laptop. I wasn't pouting. I was auditing. I realized I had been treating them like my legal dependents when, according to her, I was a stranger with a checkbook. The first thing I did was log into my company's benefits portal. In the U.S., a qualifying life event or a change in status allows for adjustments. But more importantly, I realized I had never actually legally adopted them, obviously. And since we weren't married, I checked the fine print. I had listed them as stepchildren, a status she had verified with a signed affidavit claiming I was their primary support. I called my HR representative. I told them there had been a misunderstanding regarding the dependency status of the children under the current household arrangement. Since I am not their legal guardian and no longer provide over 50% of their support, effective immediately, I needed them removed to avoid insurance fraud. Next, I emailed the bursar's office at the private school. The second semester tuition was due in 10 days. I had a scheduled wire transfer set up. I canceled it. I sent a formal letter stating that as I am not the biological parent or legal guardian, all future billing should be directed to my partner. I walked back into the living room where she was watching TV. I've accepted it, I told her. Good, she said, not looking up. I'm glad you're finally being mature. I've removed them from my health and dental insurance. I continued, and I've canceled the tuition payments for next semester. Since I'm just a guy you live with, I figured their actual parents should handle their basic needs. You should probably call your ex-husband, or get a second job. She bolted upright, her face turning a ghostly shade of white. You did what? You can't do that. The school will kick them out. Has her braces adjustment next week. Not my lane, I said. I'm staying in my lane, remember? The screaming started then, but I just went to the bedroom and locked the door. I could hear her on the phone with her mother, sobbing about how cruel and manipulative I was being. This was only the beginning. She thought she could take my resources while denying my humanity. She's about to find out how expensive clarity really is. By 7 a.m. the next morning, the house was a war zone. My partner didn't sleep. She spent the night pacing the hallway, alternating between frantic phone calls and banging on my door. When I finally stepped out to get coffee, she was waiting. Her eyes were bloodshot, but the entitlement was still firing on all cylinders. "You're going to call HR and fix this right now," she hissed, blocking my path to the kitchen. "The kids are covered under your plan. You can't just drop them in the middle of a school year. That has to be illegal." "Actually," I said, leaning against the doorframe, "maintaining them on my plan while you explicitly state I have no parental role or authority could be seen as misrepresenting our domestic partnership status to my employer. I'm protecting myself. As for the school, I sent the bursar your email address. They'll be reaching out for the $17,500 balance due by Friday." "Where am I supposed to get $17,000, you psychopath?" she screamed, and emerged from their rooms, looking groggy and confused. "What's going on?" asked, rubbing her eyes. "Your stepdad is trying to ruin your lives," my partner wailed, gesturing wildly at me. "He's kicking you out of school and taking away your doctor." Looked at me, his usual smirk replaced by a flash of genuine fear. "Wait, what about my soccer camp trip? You already paid the deposit." "I did." I nodded, "and I requested a refund. Since I'm not your dad, I shouldn't be the one funding your extracurriculars. I'm sure your mother has a plan." The entitlement shift was fascinating to watch. For 5 years, I was the ATM that should stay quiet. Now that the ATM was out of order, they were frantic, stepped toward me, trying to look intimidating. "You can't do that. You promised." "I promised my children," I said coldly. "But your mother made it very clear last night. You aren't my children. You don't even see me as a father figure. So the contract is void. You don't get the perks of a father if you don't provide the respect of a son." My partner's phone buzzed. It was a notification from the school. She looked at it and let out a guttural sound of rage. "They just flagged the account. They said if the wire isn't confirmed by Monday, the kids can't return after winter break. You're doing this on purpose. You're holding them hostage." "No," I corrected her. "I'm liberating them. They don't have to deal with my overstepping discipline anymore. They are free from my influence, and you are free from my money shaming." She tried a different tactic. She grabbed her coat and keys. "Fine. I'm calling my lawyer. We've been living together for 5 years. This is a common law marriage. I'll sue you for child support and half this house." I couldn't help it. I actually grinned. We live in a state that abolished common law marriage decades ago. And since I never legally adopted them, and we aren't married, you have zero grounds for child support. As for the house, I bought this 3 years before I met you. My name is the only one on the deed. Check the law. Honey, you're a guest who just overstayed her welcome." She stormed out, dragging the kids with her to her mother's house, screaming that I'd hear from her attorney. An hour later, I got a call from her ex-husband. We've never been friends, but we've been civil. "Hey," he said, sounding exhausted. "My ex just called me screaming that I need to cover $35,000 in tuition because you lost your mind." "What happened?" "She told me I'm nothing to the kids and I need to stay in my lane." I told him. So I did. I pulled the funding. I'm not their dad, remember? There was a long pause on the other end. "Man, she actually said that to you? After everything you paid for?" "She's a moron. Look, I can't pay that tuition. I'm barely making my own rent. If you drop them, they're going to the local district school. You know it's rough there." "I know," I said, "but that's a conversation for their parents to have. I'm just the guy she lives with." By Monday, the dirty tricks began. I arrived home from work to find my front door wide open. She had come back with U-Haul and her brother. They weren't just taking her things. They were stripping the house. The 65-inch OLED TV I bought? Gone. The high-end espresso machine? Gone. Even the guest room furniture that I owned before she moved in was being loaded onto the truck. I didn't yell. I didn't stop them. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Put back," I said calmly. "Eat it," her brother yelled, lugging my leather recliner toward the ramp. "You want to cut the kids off? We're taking what we're owed for the emotional distress you're causing." "That recliner is mine," I said, filming his face. "I have the receipt from 5 years ago. That TV was a Black Friday purchase on my credit card. This is grand larceny. You have 60 seconds to put my property back, or I'm calling the precinct." My partner walked out of the house, holding my collection of vintage watches. My heart hammered in my chest. Those were my father's. "You think you're so smart?" she spat. "Let's see how smart you feel when you have nothing left in this empty house." I didn't wait 60 seconds. I dialed 911. The police arrived within 15 minutes. Because I had the original receipts and photos of the house from a week prior stored on my cloud. It's a civil matter. Excuse her brother tried to feed the officers didn't fly. The officers saw the U-Haul packed with my furniture and are holding a box of my father's watches. "Ma'am, unless you can prove you purchased these items, you need to unload that truck," the older officer said. She threw a tantrum. She claimed we were married in spirit and that everything was communal property. The officer wasn't moved. "Is there a marriage certificate?" "No." "Then it's his house and his property." They had to unload everything under the watchful eyes of the law. The humiliation on her face as she had to carry my recliner back into the living room was the first bit of real justice I felt. When they finally drove off, leaving the house a mess but intact, I didn't sit down to rest. I changed the locks and installed a Ring camera at every entrance. Tuesday morning, the real entitlement hit the fan. I received a frantic notice of intent to disenroll from the private school via email. Apparently, my partner had gone to the school office and tried to demand they keep the kids enrolled on a hardship scholarship, claiming I had financially abused the family. The school principal called me. "Sir, we have a very distressed mother in our office. She claims you are withholding tuition as a form of domestic control." "Principal," I said, keeping my voice level, "I am not their father. I have no legal obligation to them. Their mother told me explicitly that I have no parental standing. I am simply following her directive to stay out of their lives. If there is a balance due, she is the responsible party. My financial support was a gift, one that has been revoked." The fallout was immediate. The school, being a private institution with a strict pay-to-play policy, didn't care about her drama. They informed her that without the wire transfer by the end of the day, the kids' key cards would be deactivated. I thought that would be the end of it, but my partner had one more dirty trick up her sleeve. She filed for an emergency ex parte order protection, claiming she feared for her safety and the children's safety because of my erratic behavior and financial retaliation. I was served at work. It was a gut punch. An ex parte order meant I could be kicked out of my own house until a hearing was held. She was trying to use the legal system to hijack my property since she couldn't afford her own. I didn't panic. I called my lawyer, a shark named Sarah who specializes in high-conflict domestic disputes. "She's playing the victim card to gain possession of the residence," Sarah explained. "But she made a massive mistake. She filed this under the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, but in her statement, she admitted abuse was you stopping the tuition payments. In this state, economic litigation isn't a ground for a restraining order if there's no legal duty to support." We went to court 48 hours later. My partner showed up with her mother and the kids, all dressed in black, as if they were at a funeral. She put on a performance of a lifetime, sobbing about how the kids were traumatized by the sudden loss of their school and health insurance. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, looked over the filings. "Ms. Partner, did the defendant ever threaten you physically?" "No, but he's destroying our lives," she wailed. "He's leaving the children with no doctors and no school." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Narrator, why did you cease these payments?" I stood up, pulled out the transcript of the text messages she sent me after the kitchen argument, the ones where she said, "You are nothing to them. You are just a paycheck. Don't ever think you have a say in their lives." "Your Honor," I said, "I was told I have no parental role. I am not on the birth certificates. I have never adopted them. I was informed that my involvement was an overstep. I simply complied. I cannot be accused of abandoning children that their own mother legally and verbally declares are not mine. The judge looked at the text, then at my partner. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Motion for order protection is denied. The judge snapped. This is a gross misuse of this court's time. These are not his children. You cannot demand someone be a father only when the bill comes due. As we walked out of the courtroom, my partner's mother lunged at me, screaming that I was a deadbeat. I just kept walking. But the most satisfying part was standing there, looking at me with a mix of anger and something else, realization. Are we really going to public school? He asked, his voice cracking. Ask your mom, I said. She's the one who redefined our relationship. I'm just the guy who used to live with you. The final blow didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks after the judge tossed her frivolous restraining order. I was at the house, packing the remainder of her and the kids' belongings into sturdy boxes. I had given her a formal notice to quit via a process server, the legal first step for eviction in our state. Since she wasn't a tenant with a lease, she had 30 days to clear out, and those 30 days were up. A beat-up sedan pulled into my driveway. It wasn't her brother's U-Haul this time. It was just her, looking 10 years older, and the 2 kids. They didn't look like the entitled private school students I'd spent 5 years bankrolling. They looked exhausted. She walked into the house. Her shoulders slumped. No more screaming. No more spirit of marriage talk. The reality of the local district high school, a place with metal detectors and a fraction of the resources, had clearly set in for. The school said they can't release their transcripts to the new district until the balance is settled, she said, her voice hollow. They're being held in academic limbo. They've already missed 10 days of classes. I know, I said, sealing a box of her kitchen gadgets. I received the same notification as the former secondary contact. It's a shame. Please, she whispered, the entitlement finally replaced by a desperate, ugly realization. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll apologize. Just pay the $17,000 for the semester, so they can at least transfer their credits. Is a sophomore. If he loses this year, he'll never catch up. I stopped packing and looked her dead in the eye. Do you remember what you said in the kitchen? You told me to stay in my lane. You told me to accept that I am nothing to them. I did more than accept it. I embraced it. That $17,000 is currently sitting in a new brokerage account for my future, not theirs. Stepped forward, his eyes brimming with tears. I'm sorry I was a jerk about the laptop. I didn't mean it. Please, I don't want to go to that other school. I'm on the varsity track team. My heart twinged for a second, but then I remembered him standing by while his mother tried to have me arrested for abuse because I stopped paying his way. I remembered him helping his uncle load my father's watches onto a U-Haul. You aren't sorry for how you treated me. I told him. You're sorry that your life got harder. There's a big difference. Your mother told me I wasn't your dad. And honestly, looking at how you've acted these last few weeks, she was right. I didn't raise you to be this entitled. You're her son through and through. I handed her the final box. The locks are being changed again at 5 p.m. Anything left on the curb is considered abandoned property. The revenge was silent and absolute. I watched from the window as they loaded the last of their lives into her cramped car. Her ex-husband hadn't stepped up. Her brother had disappeared when the police got involved. She was completely on her own, facing the financial reality she had ignored for 5 years while she treated me like a line of credit. A month later, I heard through the grapevine that she had to move back in with her mother in a 2-bedroom apartment. The kids are in public school now. The private school sued her for the remaining balance, and since she couldn't pay, they sent collections, tanking her credit score for the next decade. She's working 2 jobs just to cover the basics. As for me, I've never felt lighter. I realize that you can't buy love, and you certainly can't buy respect. If someone tells you who you are to them, believe them the first time, and then take your wallet and leave. The house is quiet now, just the way I like it. My father's watches are back on the mantle, and my lane has never looked clearer.